Every successful brand out there today is successful because they ask one really big question. Now, you might not even realize that the question is being asked. You might never actually hear it, but it's there and it's serving a really important function. We talk a lot about narrative here at Concept Bureau, and those questions are a part of the narrative. You can cut it two ways. You can be the kind of brand that either asks a big question, or you can be the kind of brand that answers the questions that are already being asked in this space. It's important to know which side of the equation you are. There is one side that's more powerful. It's an abstract concept, but I'm going to break it down for you with some clear examples so you can see what this looks like in real life and how you can position your brand on the right side. So being a brand that asks questions is actually powerful for a few reasons. Let's start with an example. There are two brands right now that are in the space of color that we can compare to each other. The first one is Pantone. And every year Pantone puts out their color of the year. It's a big announcement. It's meant to explore something about us as people, really reveal something about us as people. It's meant to start a discussion about where we're going as a culture, as well as being a reflection of where we've come from over the past year. There's a big question behind this idea of this color. And the question is, what can color mean to us? Now, Crayola, on the other hand, has a crayon announcement periodically, their new color for a crayon. And there's no larger question behind it. It's really just an answer. This is the color for the crayon that we're going to put out in boxes this year. There's no larger discussion. It's not a platform for some sort of conversation that can take us to an interesting place. And this is the first point I want to make. When you're a brand that asks questions, you're creating an infinite space for people to talk about something that matters. When you're a brand that answers questions, you're creating a very finite space. And when you create finite spaces, it makes it harder for you to move outside of your category. Crayola has tried to move outside of their category. They've tried to move into apps and into other formats for products for children, and it hasn't really worked. But Pantone, literally a color company, has taken those colors and turned it into profitable business lines across mugs and toys and all kinds of different products. It's really more a statement on our culture because they're the kind of brand that's willing to ask questions. Another way that being the kind of brand that asks questions really puts you in a powerful position is that it helps you dictate the range of possible answers that your competitors can put out there. I think a lot of times this happens in the tech space. So we have the tech giants like Facebook and Google. They have their own announcements every year, their own events, but they never show up at CES. And there's a very important reason for that. Facebook and Google are kind of the holders of the larger vision for the tech industry, and they know that. They use their events to talk about where tech can possibly go in the next few years. They are asking questions and creating the possible context and range of answers that other brands will have to aspire to. And that's what happens at CES. That's where you have all those other tech brands that show up and they answer those questions that Facebook and Google put out every year. Now, not literally, but figuratively. That's why we look at the tech giant events as something that will reveal something about the future, where we can start exploring those big, exciting questions. And why CES is really more of a novelty, where we go to kind of see the tactical applications of those questions, find things that maybe delight us in the short term, but nobody is really asking there. CES is a bunch of answers. You can see if you're the brand that asks the questions, you create the context and the range of possible answers for competitors in your field. Now, if you're a small or new player in your space and you're wondering, how do I come in and ask a big question? One good way to do that is to ask a bigger question than what's already out there. And we see this in beauty and food. Those are two really interesting categories to look at. And this actually has happened. We've seen it happen. If you come into this space and you're facing the Unilevers or the P&Gs or the Crafts of the world, you can ask something that leapfrogs what's already out there. And that's what these brands did. Beauty and food started the conversation of X-free. In other words, sulfate-free, chemical-free, gluten-free, dairy-free. That movement had a big question behind it. And the question was, what are we actually willing to put on and in our bodies? What is the future of beauty and food? Shouldn't we be moving in a direction that's safer for us? Shouldn't we be moving in a direction that would be beneficial to us as individuals? That was a much bigger question than these incumbents were asking at the time. And that's how a lot of them were able to gain their footing in this space. That's why the space has become so fragmented as well. And you see so many new beauty and food brands emerging because they were willing to ask a bigger question. So if you take this all together, really, there's just a few things to keep in mind. There are those who answer and there are those who ask. And as long as you're a brand that's asking, you're in a position of strength because you get to dictate the range of answers. You get to start the conversation. You get to move outside of your specific category. And you get to make sure that the conversation is going in a direction that's beneficial to you.